A lot of debate right now about the value of a college education. There was a time that was indispensable to really move forward and move up in this country. Is it as important today as it was a generation ago?
It's far more important today than it was when I started out. When you think about the complexity of the world, when you think about the myriad things that people have to absorb from an intellectual standpoint, when you think about the difficulty of making a happy, fulfilling life, oh my goodness, do we ever need a higher education?
So it raises, in my mind at least, the question, how do we make sure that the people who can benefit from that, the talent that we have in this country, get the education? Because it's gotten harder. It's gotten more expensive and more difficult, particularly for people who are not from privileged backgrounds.
My own view, and I've espoused this for many, many years, is that we've become too segmented in higher education in this country. And that is to say, there are elite institutions that hold themselves up as being so much better, so much more privileged than other institutions. There are the haves and have-nots. And furthermore, we've pulled apart significantly because the rich have gotten extraordinarily richer and the poorer have stayed poor or gotten much worse. But here's the thing, and I so want in my book for people to understand this, and that is I had the education that I could get. I grew up in a segregated country. I grew up when we didn't have access as African Americans to the quality of education that whites had. And I went to a black college. That was still a wonderful experience for me and beneficial for me. And I was able to take that and go to Harvard to graduate school and then make my way in the world. So what I advocate is that people use every avenue for education. And community colleges are a good place to start. So are state colleges that have a teaching mission. You don't have to go to a research university. You may want to do that, but it isn't necessary at all. But more than anything, I want those elite institutions to stop it, to stop saying we are so much better, and if you don't come to Brown, and if you don't come to Harvard, well, oh gee, you're not going to be successful in life. It's just not true.
You grew up in a segregated environment.
Yes.
A very different environment, I hope, than what we really have today. In your book, you write, I believe, about actually being with white students for the first time in Mexico.
Yes.
You went to Mexico to study Spanish.
Yes, isn't that odd?
You mentioned the, exactly, what a story. But you mentioned the importance of teachers. What about your classmates? Does it make a difference in your experience now to have a diverse group of students around you, not just teachers who believe in you?
Of course it does. And it doesn't matter where you are. You can be in a tribal college or a minority serving institution or an HBCU. You need to have experiences with people of all backgrounds. So let me tell you this story, if I may. I did an exchange program with Wellesley when I was a junior. And I was taking an ancient philosophy class, and in the middle of this class, the question turned to apartheid, which was still going on in South Africa. And so we started a conversation, and of course, everybody in the classroom decried the situation in South Africa. But there was one girl who raised her hand and who spoke up to say that she wanted to defend apartheid. She was South African, and she talked about her life as a white South African. Of course, she didn't convince me that apartheid was just a just system, but when I heard her speak, I have never forgotten this girl. I wish I could find her, because I cannot remember a single other student in that class, but I remember her. And I remember the lesson she taught me, which is, whenever you have an opportunity to hear different points of view, even if you don't agree with them, you learn something from it. And I think she set me on a course in my studies that I never would have had without that encounter.
You mentioned HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities. You went to one, and
Yes.
then you led one when you came out of retirement after
Yes.
Brown to lead Prairie A&M. Talk about the importance of HBCUs in this day and age. I mean, are they a story of success or not? I mean, do we still need HBCUs at this point? And if so, why do we still need them?
Well, first of all, keep in mind that our educational system, as it were, in higher education is not like other countries, where it's mandated and funded by the government. And that means that it's all the same throughout. Here in this country, we have institutions that were created before the country was created. And so we had private universities come into being. We had different states set up different systems with their own missions. So we have a variegated system of higher education. And that means that we have become accustomed to having institutions that meet our particular interests and needs. So if you are religious, you can go to a religious institution. If you are a woman, you can go to a women's college. There even is a men's college, Morehouse College, that you could go to. So I always have to remind people when they cite HBCUs that we have lots of institutions like that around the country that have special missions. Now, as to HBCUs and whether we need them, of course we do. Do we have a racial problem in the United States still? Of course we do. Do we have a situation where many young people are discouraged because they think they will be rejected, that they won't have any opportunities in life, that they won't be able to make it? We do. And what does an HBCU do for them? What it did for me, and that is, I went off to an HBCU thinking I was nothing. I couldn't do very much, and I wouldn't have much of a life and so forth. And this place turned me into a person who started to think for myself, started to believe that there was something that I could do, and that it was invaluable for me. And keep in mind that many of the great African American leaders in this country have come from HBCUs, and that is the reason they have, because they have found a place where they can learn. When I was president of Smith, I thought that one of the biggest problems we had was women struggled in engineering. And I created an engineering program at Smith, at a women's college, to prove that women could do engineering on a par with men. And at a certain time in our development in this country, we've needed programs for women because women were often taught that there were certain things they couldn't do either.
So finally, this is Bloomberg, this is Wall Street Week. We speak to people in places of leadership in the financial world and in corporations. What can those leaders in the financial and business world do to make sure that we have all the talent that we need, that we can develop, wherever they come from, whatever their origin, really on the team, as it were, helping move our economy forward?
Well, I certainly believe that universities have a special role to play, but I believe firmly that corporations have to be, along with universities, leading this struggle to make sure that we're tapping into the talent and ability of all segments of the U.S. population. Imagine that we have a country so rich in diversity and so rich in talent in all these areas, and we're not availing ourselves of that. That doesn't make any sense. It's illogical. So, as you may know, I've been on a number of corporate boards. And in the boardroom, I'm often advocating for inclusion of executives from different perspectives, including women, because it adds immeasurably to the corporation's understanding of their customers, understanding what the opportunities will be for them as a business going forward. So no, CEOs need to be playing a very visible role in this, and I've been very fortunate in the last few years to see many CEOs step into this space and say, no, I'm going to lead in this space because it's important for the country.